I am Anamaria. I am the head of community at Butter, and I am also the founder and community catalyst for L&D Shakers. Designing learning, especially within communities, it has that very fluid characteristic that culture might have. So that's why it's so hard to nurture culture, and that's why you hear still just a lot of it's a big deal. It's always top of mind for leaders, for founders, executive teams, and so on. Not a good culture, really good culture fit, and so on. And then when we start culture by design, it's also not easy to do. It's not something, although it adds that element of intentionality, which I guess it's the first step towards trying to steer that and give it shape. Culture is still very fluid, and learning within communities is also still very fluid. And learning by design, yes, there is a part in communities, I guess, that also have to be a learning by non-design in order for them to work. So I think that often it's quite the opposite that we're trying to do.
That's interesting.
Because whenever I look at communities of learning and practice, I look at them as a bit like an ecosystem, and I'm trying to think, what are all the possibilities that we can create in here, all of the formats that we can bring for people to gather and share and learn from each other. And they range from asynchronously. How do we learn asynchronously? And then you go with experiments, we experiment with something, I don't know, asynchronous Ask Me Anything sessions for the Butter community. For the L&D Shakers, we have something that we call the community takeover for a week. And everything happens asynchronously. So that is by design, because you are very mindfully trying to, you're picking something, you're experimenting with a format, with a mini program, with an idea to see if it fosters conversation and exchange between people. So that is very much the part of by design.
You design an invitation, and then you see what emerges in that space.
Correct. You design the invitation and see what emerges, and you're giving it a try. And if it sticks, it sticks, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. It's the same with events. Okay, so events, the sync learning, bringing people together, it's a no-brainer for communities, right? Especially if the goal is to share and exchange. We need to be in the same virtual room to be able to share. And then, okay, what type of sharing, and how should, again, that space, that virtual space look like, and the invitation and so on. So for us, for example, in Butter community, you have 2 main events. In Shakers, we have 5 different types of events. And how the event runs and what happens is different from one type to the other. So that's very much intentional, but and now it's by design. But the way we sometimes got there, the underlying, is very much by anti-design, non-design. And what I mean by that is this very leaving space for emergence, not only for the core team, from everyone in the community to dream and come up with things, and give them the potential, the space, the enablement, the cheering from the sidelines for them to go and do that thing actually, or experiment with that thing. And just an example is, so for the Butter community, there were 2 members that came my way and said, I think it would be really cool to have this concept of a sandbox. At the end, we landed on this name, Facilitation Sandbox, because facilitation is really hard to get right, but the only way to get it right is to do it. So how do I get from not knowing to expert if I do not do it? And where do I do it? In a sandbox that's a safe space. And they came up with this idea, and I said, is that do you want to make this yours? And so it's theirs, right? So they source the hosts, and they make it happen. So that was very much by non-design. I didn't set out to plant that seed somehow somewhere, right? The same with L&D Shakers. I had a conversation with a person, and in that chat, it was a coffee chat. We didn't even met with the purpose to come up with something. And in that conversation, she brought up this idea of, oh my God, so many people try to break into L&D. The field is so diverse. I don't even know what are all the roles that are possible there, and what are all the skills that people are using.
I feel the same.
So how cool would it be to have this kind of, how cool would it be to maybe create a one-day expo, an exposition where different people from the community with different roles will showcase what is it that they're doing, and they will tell us about their career and so on.
Word
and
cafe.
then I said, bam, that looks awesome. So we did an expo. We went, let's do this. This actually sounds interesting. We rallied 3 other people. It was a group of 5. And then in 3 months, we made it happen. So that is by non-design, because you kind of want to leave the freedom for stuff to emerge. And when that little spark emerges, you want to nurture that. And it's very similar to culture, I guess, because culture, you also have to look very, give enough freedom, have this idea that it's okay to come up with new stuff and it's okay to experiment, and those things, it's okay for them to sometimes fail. Sometimes they won't, but sometimes they will. Exactly. And again, in culture is always looking who has an issue, who has ideas, what are the projects that we can actually not necessarily engineer, but as they happen organically, nurture and give them a space and give them the spotlight and applaud for them and cheer for them. And it's very similar. So I don't know, it's by design and non-design at the same time, I feel. It's the fact that you allow for freedom, it's also a choice. So I guess that's also by design. You're thinking, I want to have some structure and I want to leave room for emergence.
You create the stage and then gives room for what is happening.
So that's also an intention.